Hi, this is Ann's daddy, Tom Dickens, and she wanted to record me as I tell the story of being a stroke victim in 1976.
Do you remember the
And
date?
I used to drive to the Outer Banks every week, and would normally wind up back in Elizabeth City at night, spend the night, and get up the next morning. And I had two plumbers that I'd meet. The motel had a restaurant, and I'd meet these two plumbers, George Raper and James Morris, at the restaurant. We'd have breakfast, and they would give me their orders for the week. And it was very routine. And that particular morning, I got up, took a shower, had dressed, put on my underclothes, and the medicine cabinet had fluorescent tubes on the sides. And in my mind, the fluorescent tubes were making a shrill sound. I said, what in the world is that going on? So I said, I can fix that. So I reached over and cut the light switch off, but the sound was still going. And I'm thinking, by this time my face is beginning to get numb, like a dentist visit or whatever. So I realized that I was having a stroke, and I really thought I was dying, because I heard two songs that the Spear family made popular. One was Touring That City, and The King Is Coming. And in my mind I said, well, this is it. And yet I asked God to let me live long enough to get my children grown and gone. So in the meantime,
How old were your children? How old were your children then?
How are you in 76?
5.
Okay. So, so in the meantime, the phone system in the motel was the type that if you picked up, they would answer at the office. You didn't have to dial anything. So I drug myself across the room, picked up the phone, called the desk, and said, Mr. Williams, I'm sick and I need some help. And so within 3 minutes, I had about 8 or 10 people hanging over me. And so they got me up and took me out to the Elizabeth City Hospital, and they evaluated me and said, you've had a stroke and the worst has already happened. It ain't gonna get no worse. Do you know Dr. K.D. Weeks in Rocky Mount? I said, yeah. He said, well, you need to get somebody to take you back to Rocky Mount and be admitted up there and not down here. I said, okay. And so called James Morris immediately volunteered to take me. And so he had a Lincoln Town car, and he and his wife loaded me up. In the meantime, they called the company, and they sent, can't remember the guy's name, and we met in Williamson, and they brought Tommy and Corinne in Mr. Pulley's car, and they finally got back to Rocky Mount, took me to the Nash General, stayed out there for a week. And by that time, there's really nothing they can do about it, because once you have a stroke, if you have a stroke today and get to the hospital quick enough, they can reverse and melt the clot, and there's no change. But we didn't have that resource. So I was there for a week, and it was like just laying in bed, no nothing to do. And this side was numb, and there's no physical therapy or anything. And finally the doctor came in and said, we don't really have any treatment for what you got. And it's a brain, it affects your brain, the stroke affects your brain, as I recall. And he said, we're gonna send it to Duke and let them treat you. So I think Tommy took me to Duke in the company car, and I was over there for 10 days, and it was just like laying there. And so after 10 days, they said, there's nothing we can do for you, so you can go home. They give me a weight and a 5-pound barbell and a cane, and basically said, go home and enjoy life. And if I tried to be real active, I would freeze up. I mean, just like. So I finally got to where I could go down to the company and work, see a couple hours and get all tensed up, and then go back home and by myself. And then the next day I tried to go again, and I kept stretching those work hours, and to the point I finally got back on the road full time. But that was a real chore to do that, because like I say, I'd get tensed up, and many a time I'd pull off the side of the road and just do this until I was on what I didn't have no control of. So that went on for I don't know how many months, probably maximum 6 months, and then I finally got back on the road full time. And now I still have some numbness in his arm because of the lack of exercise, and never had any problem since. But one of the funny things about Duke, and you may have already heard this, the doctor up there asked me one day, he came in and he'd stick your feet, stick a pin in your feet or in your arms. You feel that? I said, yeah, I feel that. So he came in one day and he said, what kind of business you in? And I said, plumbing and heating distributor. And with rapid fire, he said, what's a BTU? It's a British thermal unit. What's a British thermal unit? The amount of energy required to raise a pound of water 1 degree Celsius, centigrade at sea level. Who's the Vice President of the United States? I haven't a clue. So he laughed and walked out. I asked the nurse, I said, who's the Vice President? She said, forgot who I said it was now.
Was it Mondale?
So anyhow, the doctor came in the next day, and I said, I know who the Vice President is. And he said, who? And I told him. And then he laughingly said, you did all right on that BTU business yesterday. He said, you might as well go home. There's nothing wrong with your brain. I said, okay. So I was in the neurosurgical ward, which is the highest price rooms up there. And I said, oh, y'all got some easy terms, because I think my insurance was paying like $30 a day, and that room or that bed in that ward was like $195 a day. And I was up there for 10 days. So they just told me, said, pay it as you can. So I finally got it paid off.
Well, did God answer your prayers?
Huh?
Did God answer your prayers?
On what?
Did God answer your prayers?
Yes, he did.
Because all your children are raised, and your grandchildren.
Didn't ever have to get one of you out of jail or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyhow, everything turned out good.
Do you remember what date it was?
It was March the 17th, 1976.
Okay.
It was Freddie's birthday.
Really? Okay. Thank you, Daddy.